Hello everybody, it's your Peacekeeper, and we are going to talk about patch 0.5.15. But before we get to that, there's something special that has happened on the channel thanks to you guys. And if you'll look here where it says subscribers, we've got over 1,000 subs, and I have to be honest with you guys, I am legitimately thrilled that there's 1,000 of you that actually enjoy the content that I produce. So thank you guys very much for being a part of this channel. And to kind of kick off a little bit more involvement with you guys outside the comment section, what I want to do is I want to have a question and answer video done. And so what I'd like you guys to do, if you guys have a question, whether that's about the game, about some aspects of my personal life, I guess if you really care that much, preferably about the game or direction of the channel, if you will, throw those questions down in the comments, and I'll make a video of me answering those questions. Also, with the recent changeover, the purchase of Time Warner Cable by Charter and becoming Spectrum, there's a possibility that I might be able to start doing streaming again. As many of you probably have noticed, my Twitch account and my YouTube streams no longer play. Well, that's because I haven't had the ability to, due to a speed decrease. So hopefully that will come up later. The changeover to Spectrum was supposed to have happened, yet my speeds have remained the same. So I'm not sure what the status is on that, but there's a possibility that that might be coming up a little bit later. Also, if any of you guys listen to the Shoot the Red Ships podcast, expect to hear more of my content, as I have recently come to an agreement with Captain Vermicelli and Spectre Mage of Shoot the Red Ships to produce some history content for them on their new podcasts and streams. So look forward to some of that stuff on their podcast. Alright, that's enough of me babbling about my channel. Let's get to the meat and potatoes of this. Patch 0.5.15. Of course, you could watch Dasha. She's probably far more entertaining than to listen to me, but we'll skip past her. She's definitely far better looking than I am. So there are a number of big changes to the game now with 5.15. We're getting campaigns. Japanese destroyer line split is happening. Dynamic divisions. Permanent camouflage, and then there's some other minor tweaks to the game, including a buff to the Pensacola. We'll get there. Let's dive in. Campaigns. So it sounds like campaigns, just from reading through this, that it's basically going to be missions, like chain missions, kind of like what we already have, but the end rewards will be better, is the way I understand the notes here. I look forward to this simply because it gives me something to do. It gives you a direction in the game. Whereas right now, you know, we can log in, we can press random battles, or press PvE, or co-op, or press, into ranked when ranked is going. But really, there's no substance to those outside of the kind of modified theme of deathmatch. There's no direction to it. There's no purpose to it aside from just making videos and having fun. At least now there's a little bit more of a campaign, a direction for you to go, some measure of success. So I look forward to doing that. I don't think it says how many tasks there are, but I'm hoping it's a lot so that we can get a very solid long-term projection here where I'm not done with this in a week. You know, that would be ridiculous. I'm hoping we don't get to that point. But here's really what I'm looking forward to the most in this change, and that's the new Japanese destroyers. Of course, there are some changes to the lower tier ships, and man, I was watching one of the community contributors, IIRC, and he had some not so pleasant things to say about these. And I mean, I guess he's played the ships, but I'm holding my opinion back on whether or not these are going to be the end of the Japanese destroyer line as we know it, until I actually have the opportunity to play them. But just looking at these changes, you can see Umikaze is getting HE shell damage reduced by 15%. That's kind of a large number. and chance to set on fire down 1%. That's not a huge change. Wakataki's getting some torpedoes removed and a nerf to its HE damage. Isakaze, now this one actually, Isakaze and Minakaze were probably the two most overperforming destroyers in the entire line. Very popular seal clubbers, very fun ships to play, but man, these two ships were in need of some downward tweaks, and I'm glad that they finally did it. We'll see whether or not this is going too far or not. They've increased the main battery reload time from 10 to 12 seconds, which is just absolutely anemic. They've changed the torpedo speed from 68 knots to 57. They've reduced the damage to 10,833, lopped off 3,800 damage off of them. But they've dropped the reload time from 47 to 42 seconds. And of course that comes with the corresponding 15% reduction in HE shell damage. Mutsuki was moved from Tier 6 to Tier 5. Apparently we can get the details there. I won't go into them. I believe if we go back up here, Mutsuki is on the torpedo line. So this line is going to be the torpedo. This is the proposed gunboat line, or at least what they're calling gunboats. Fubuki goes down to 6 from 8. Akatsuki goes to Tier 7, and that's going to replace Hatsuharu. Kagero goes down to 8. Yugumo at Tier 9, and then of course Shimakaze. Shimakaze is also getting nerfed, but kind of a slight buff. She's getting her HE alpha tweaked downward by 14% and tweaking the fire percent chance down to 7%, but she's getting a 1 second reduction in her reload time for her main guns. Really interesting choice. I don't know that that's the direction I would have gone, but, like I said, I'm willing to play it to give it its fair shot. Certainly looking forward to playing the Akatsuki and the Yugumo, those two being the two new ships in the line, the torpedo boat line. I'm not so sure that these differences are going to be terribly huge because Akatsuki, depending on who you ask, is really kind of a subclass of the Fubuki class. And really, it's the last 4 destroyers. There were some differences between them, but predominantly they were basically the same class of ships. So I don't know what the deal is with there. Also, Yugumo is also in the same boat. Yugumo is basically a second production run, or third production run. I can't remember which now. It's a later production run of the Kageros. So, curious to see what the differences are here. Obviously, we got to wait for the game servers to come back up. It's 6:21 in the morning, and, well, the servers aren't up yet. Okay, so now we're getting into the gunboat line. Minakaze gets moved to the gunboat line. Not sure how I feel about that. Minakaze's guns aren't exactly spectacular, but it looks like they're taking some steps. They're reducing the reload time on it from 12.6 to 10.9 for the Type 3, and then the Type 3B from 10.5 to 10 seconds. So she is getting a reload speed buff. Okay. And then comes the, these torpedo speed changes are the equivalent of what we saw with Isakaze. The torpedoes are going from 68 down to 57 knots. They're losing 3,800 damage, 3,600 damage, and increasing in the reload speed. Hatsuharu is getting moved from 7 to 6 in the gunboat line. Shiriatsuyu, which is probably going to be more famously known for Yudachi, which would be the, where poi comes from. I'm sure that's going to be very interesting. If I remember correctly from the video from Earl Grey and I Chase, they were saying that the Shiriatsuyu gets a torpedo reload booster that has a 5-second reload on the torpedoes, and it has 8. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays. And then, of course, Akazuki, which is the Tier 8 gunboat, the pinnacle of the gunboat line. It has the 800mm machine guns, as some people are starting to call them already. So that'll be interesting to see how that works out. There's some other information in here as to what exactly all the changes were and how they are going to reward you if you have them. Just know that you aren't going to be left high and dry. So if you want to read through those, I definitely recommend reading through them. I'm not going to cover them all right now because it would simply take too much time. And you can see there's a lot there. All right, dynamic divisions. This looks interesting. This will certainly help out for those of you if you happen to catch me in a game and I'm not divisioned with somebody and you want to division up. We can certainly do that. We can do that now from the in-game interface, and it will stay with us, and we can stay divisioned at that point. And it brings up apparently all of the division bonuses. So if you have voice chat enabled, which if you plan on playing with me, please do have it enabled. It makes gameplay a lot easier. And if you don't have a headset, at least you'll be able to hear me talk when I need something, or if I can respond to your questions a little bit better. So that looks interesting. And of course, permanent camouflages for Pensacola, Akatsuki, Shiratsu, Akazuki, and Yugumo. Let's see. Oh, containers. Probably one of the bigger container changes. If you have a premium ship already from one of the super containers, and you were to get that again with the super container, you will now be rewarded with a different premium ship that is in the super containers. If you have all of the available ships in the super containers, you will be getting just that doubloon value. So that's kind of nice. And of course, they've made some slight tweaks to different maps. You can see the epicenter mode. They've made the sector boundaries neat, solid lines. I always thought they were already. Either way, I'm not sure that really changes much, but whatever. They've tweaked the St. Petersburg port and a couple of the maps to improve the visuals on them. It even says defects. Defects in the St. Petersburg port. Okay. Okay. We got some changes to the physics model, which involves dead ships. We will no longer have ships leaping out of the water, including destroyed ships. We will no longer have ships that are being rammed, that are dead, twitching. No longer have problems with ships just randomly rotating once they're destroyed. So those will be kind of nice. Here's the buff to the Pensacola. For her top hull, AA mounts were added to the top of the main turrets. Her AA damage within 2 kilometers was increased from 54 to 61 points. Moreover, there was a camera change in order to look over these mounts. What a huge buff, guys. Take the worst cruiser in the U.S. cruiser line, the one that everybody says is a paywall, and completely ignore the reasons why everybody hates it and don't give it any reason to be proud. How about you give us, the late war refit for her? Drop her detection down. Maybe increase her hit points. I don't know. And, of course, we're getting some new graphics stuff. It looks like we're getting more detailed reflections, which is nice. It's nice to see that this game engine is not static. Obviously, this is a modified version of the World of Tanks engine and the World of Warplanes engine. And so those are quite old, and so it's nice to see that this one is staying up to date. And I'm sure those other ones are too. I just don't play them. New content for testing. I'm assuming that's for those of us in the Super Test program. Looks like your guys are going to start seeing the German destroyers as well as the Soviet cruiser Oleg, the Admiral Graf Spee, and the Missouri thrown in the game for testing purposes. And then there's a bunch of other random bugs that were fixed. But I am seriously looking forward to the Japanese destroyer line split. Those of you guys who have already seen my video on destroyer balance, you know I have a particular hatred for the way most people play the late tier, starting at about tier 7 and on Japanese destroyers. I think people are way too passive with them, and that explains why they're not getting as good of results with them. And being passive mostly because they have torpedoes that have such long range, they never feel the need to actually close the distance. And then, of course, those same people will go on long-winded rants about how, I can't hit anything with my torpedoes. And it's like, man, you're launching your torpedoes from 15K away, and by the time they get to them, they're so spread out, of course you're not going to get any hits because, one, there is a detection range problem, but two, they can see them and they have plenty of time to react, and there's plenty of space for them to, stick their ship through. So you can't launch at max range with any torpedo set. Of course, the U.S. destroyers don't have this problem nearly as much as the claim because they have the lower detection range. Well, no, not necessarily. The spreads on the torpedoes are supposedly identical, so if they're all identical in that regard, obviously the problem isn't necessarily solely detection range. Sure, it helps. The difference is only about 2 seconds. And I'm sorry, but if you set your torpedoes up right, 2 seconds isn't going to matter. And if they're permanently spotted, it doesn't matter if an aircraft flies over and permanently spots them. It's not going to matter if you're in a U.S. destroyer, if you're in a Japanese destroyer, you're in a Russian destroyer, if you're in a cruiser. Those torpedoes are going to miss unless the person is just not paying attention at all, which is entirely possible. You can avoid that by knowing how to use torpedoes, and I plan on doing, and I haven't come up with the name of it, some form of Captain Academy, talking about some of the basic skills for aiming, knowing what shell type to use in what situation, because when we get to the cruiser balance video, guys, I'm going to rail hard on the German cruiser players because they suffer from the same problem that the Japanese destroyer captains have. They get stuck in this idea that they should be able to do something, namely use HE for the German cruisers, when in reality their AP is actually where the money's at. Or in the case of the Japanese destroyers, you have to get closer to use the torpedoes and the guns are still useful. So there's definitely some merit in video series for that, and I'm sure that will come, probably at the midpoint through December, possibly into the early part of January. So I think that there's going to be a lot of very interesting and probably butthurt people when the cruiser video comes out and when we start going down the Japanese destroyer line with the How to Play series, because honestly, there's a large number of people that have it in their mind, I have to play this ship a certain way, and they're never going to succeed in that way because it's not the correct way to play them. But anyway, I'll stop harping on that. And once again, guys, I really do appreciate that there are 1,001 of you who have subscribed to this channel and are willing to listen to me ramble on for, 17 minutes and 30 seconds at this point. So I really appreciate you guys. Please get your comments down in the comment section with your questions and any other comments, obviously. And as always, subscribe and like. And thanks for watching.